All right, today's date is 30 July 2022. My name is Dennis Gill with the Americans in Wartime Experience. I'm here in Virginia Beach conducting an interview with Ryan Hinely. Ryan, appreciate you sitting down and talking to us. If you could just give us a little bit of background on yourself. Where were you born? Where did you grow up?
Sure. So I grew up overseas in Saudi Arabia. My mom and dad are from Savannah, Georgia.
Okay.
And when they were in their 20s, they got married and moved overseas. My dad's a pharmacist, so he worked on a military hospital. He's not military, but he was a civilian contractor at King Fahd Hospital. So I was born there and lived there 13 years, and we came back to the States after 9/11 in 2001.
What branch of the service were you in?
I was in the Marines.
Marine Corps?
Yep.
Any other family members that were veterans?
Not from my generation. So
Okay.
I have an uncle that was in the Coast Guard, but not from my generation or my parents' generation. My grandparents' generation, they all served in World War II.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. Why did you decide to join the military? Why did you pick the Marine Corps?
So I was in college and kind of in a dark place in my life, and just felt very lost and didn't know what to do with myself. So it seemed like a kind of a drastic change. It seemed like the most drastic change that I could do at that time, and something it just appealed to me. You know, the aura of like intensity and discipline about the Marine Corps in particular appealed to me. So that's why I went into the Marines.
Yeah. What year did you go in?
2009.
2009. Where was your basic training?
It was at San Diego,
In San
MCRD.
Okay. Do you have any idea what it is you wanted to do in the Marine Corps, or just?
So I went in and asked to be infantry. I just said I wanted to be in the infantry, and I was really lucky. I had a good recruiter that, based on my ASVAB scores, he saw my ASVAB score and he said, "Well, can you swim?" And I said, "Yeah, I can swim." So they offered me a reconnaissance contract, and which is just, you do boot camp, do infantry training battalion, so you're no 311, but then you go to the basic reconnaissance course, and it's a contract. So I went in with the opportunity to do that, which was I was lucky. I had a good recruiter that was upfront with me about what it would be like, and that turned out to be just a good path for me. I like the community a lot.
Right. What is a Recon Marine? What are your duties?
So it's an infantry MOS. It's a lot of, the formal title is amphibious reconnaissance. So I think the job originated in World War II, when the U.S. was in the Pacific. They had infantry guys swim in on the beaches in the Pacific and scout the beaches to make sure they're suitable for a land invasion. So that's how it evolved. In Vietnam, reconnaissance teams were doing lots of very long range patrolling. Right. Deep in enemy territory. So the recon school in California, a lot of it's there's 3 phases. One of them is actually on Coronado, and so you're finning in the ocean a lot and doing the amphibious component of it. But then the rest of it is all patrolling and movement patterns.
Right.
A lot of radio stuff. So just everything you would need to know to support. Well, the basic knowledge of how to conduct surveillance and reconnaissance patrols in enemy territory, at least in terms of how it evolved and how it's structured and how the training is. Even if warfare today is not linear and there's not necessarily, territory is very ambiguous in contemporary warfare. It's not like World War II or Vietnam or something.
How long is the training for that?
So at the time, it was you do boot camp, then which is 3 months, and you do the infantry school, which is 2 months. So you're qualified as a rifleman or rifle marine, and then they put you in a kind of a holding training platoon called MART, Marines Awaiting Recon Training, and you're just waiting to pick up into a reconnaissance course school cycle.
Right.
I'm not sure how many they did per year at the time, probably like 3 or 4, but you're just waiting. We lived in some trailers on Camp Pendleton, and Monday through Friday we would wake up pretty early, maybe 6 or 6:30, and then get breakfast, and then run 2 or 3 kilometers to one of 2 swimming pools that were nearby on the base, and then we would just train in the pool all day. So we tread water 6 or 7 hours.
Okay.
And play different games like tread water and hold a rubber rifle above our heads, or hold a hula hoop on the bottom of the pool in a group of 5, and then like rotate, because hula hoops are buoyant, so you need, like, if you don't hold it down, it floats. So we'd have to keep it down on the bottom of the pool and rotate, getting oxygen. So just things like that just are kind of stress test, and just make sure you have to be comfortable. You learn to be comfortable in the water, so I did that for a month, but other guys were in there for 3 months, 6 months. It kind of just depended on if they got hurt. If they got hurt, they'd kind of have to cycle back and wait. Some guys picked up in the course and sprained their ankle badly enough that they'd have to rehabilitate for a few months, and then they'd have to wait to pick up again. So I was there a month, and then the course is I think it was 3 months at the time. I think they've changed it now. Now it's a 2-year pipeline, so it's just like a continuous pipeline to get the MOS. You do the reconnaissance, boot camp, ITB, the recon school, jump, dive, SEER, free fall, military free fall. Like, it's much more structured now than when I went through it.
You talked about being comfortable in the water. Was that something were you comfortable in the water before you became a Marine? Or was that new to you?
I did. I knew how to swim, and I'd swim a little bit in middle school and high school, but the way they teach swimming in the Marine Corps is a little bit. In the Marine Corps reconnaissance community is a little different. It's survival swimming. It's if you're wearing camis, and sometimes you'd have a ruck in you, and if you're wearing camis and you have weight and you're tired, you've been treading water for 7 hours, and you're just exhausted. Can you relax enough to keep going? You know what I mean? Right. Can you stay relaxed and calm enough to keep going? So it's different from maybe swimming in like a school environment where you're swimming for time, and you're rested and you're well fed. So it's just a different mindset. And it took maybe a week or two, maybe like a week, for me to really transition to the way they teach it in the reconnaissance community, just because you have to relax a lot, and you have to be comfortable being tired and treading water a lot, and like maintaining discipline with your breath to stay buoyant, to conserve energy, so you can, because you may have another 6 hours in the pool, or in a true survival situation, you can be in the ocean for days. You really have to conserve energy and maintain discipline and relax. So you learn that pretty quickly when you're in a pool all day treading water.
You deployed all overseas?
I did 2 Marine Expeditionary units. So they in both the 2-2 MU and the 2-4 MU, and they put there's 2 different platoons, but each time they just put the recon platoon that I was in on a naval deployment.
Where was the first one?
So the first one, the ship we were on, was patrolling near Somalia, just in the ocean, in the water near Somalia. and the aircraft on the ship were doing something in Yemen. They were doing flight ops all the time in Yemen. But for infantry Marines on the ship, you exist on the ship. You don't really have a job there, so you just exist.
Right.
So we did the best we could with that. We trained to do what they call the Visit Board Search C, BBSS mission, Visit Board Search Cs. We trained to be able to retake cargo ships from pirates if the cargo ship were taken. Either fast roping in from a helicopter or climbing up from a SWIC boat, which was fun. The training cycle was a lot of fun. In practice, we didn't get a mission like that, and I think realistically they would give a mission like that to Navy SEALs, not to Recon Marines. Like a super high profile international mission like that, they're going to give it to their highest tier asset that they can possibly,
like the Captain Phillips.
Exactly. Yeah. So they would, if there's like a tier 1 asset in the in the theater of operations, they're gonna call them and deploy them first. But the training was good. It was that first platoon was a really good platoon, and the training was fun. And it was a good time.
What are you doing on the ship? I mean, it's a Navy ship, so you guys are kind of along for the ride. What kind of things are you doing to pass the time? And
nothing good. I mean, nothing. People would watch movies on DVDs. They play video games. They play cards. People would have bring TVs with them on the deployment, and Xboxes and PlayStations, and sometimes play video game tournaments, or sometimes just play a game in the berthing area on the ship. Honestly, I don't remember if this. So I did 2 back-to-back Mews, and sometimes my memories of the 2 kind of blur together because it was so much time on ship. And when you're on a ship, it's just you don't experience seasons, and you're just on the ship. The time is very monotonous, so it blurs together. But sometimes I would even, unless we had some requirement to train, or sometimes we stopped on the second deployment, we stopped in Kuwait and then Jordan, and we were training in Kuwait and Jordan, and training with Jordanian military, training Jordanian military on basic land navigation and shooting. But unless we had some mission like that, and if there were stretches where we were just on the ship for months with nothing to do, and I would actually, as much as I could, I would try to sleep during the day and then stay awake at night because it was quieter, and I could go to the gym, which was emptier at night, and then I would work out at the gym, and then play a video game or something. Really, I was anything very escapist that you could just so I'd play games that are have fantasy worlds that you can just explore, just to kind of escape and have a sense of, because you don't have any privacy on the ship at all. So you're kind of if you can mentally go to a space, even if it's in a video game, where you have more space and freedom to explore, that's what I would do a lot of the time. I just sleep as much as I could, and then play a game, drink coffee to stay up all night, and then play a video game or read sometimes.
Yeah. What kind of ship were you
on? For the most part, we were on LHDs, so the USS Bataan on the first deployment, and then the USS Iwo Jima on the second one. The Bataan's been decommissioned since then. It was an old ship. It had a lot of, the AC would break a lot, and the plumbing would break all the time. But they switched us around. So the first one we spent 3 months on the Mesa Verde, which is a smaller ship. I think it's an LSD. I think that's the acronym for the type of ship. But then they switched us to the Bataan, which is a much bigger ship. And then on the second one, we were on the USS New York for 2 months, and then they put us on the USS Iwo Jima.
Are there any incidents that stand out? Your time, was it all just monotonous, kind of, or was there anything that stood out about any of your deployments?
The deployments were pretty monotonous. I think the workup cycle for the first deployment was great. Like the platoon, I was very close with the platoon that I served with, and we did a 6-month shooting package, like a training evolution, in both on the range and then in a shoot house, and that was really great because you just train so much with people, like you get really attuned to them. And it's such a, like, I don't know, we train so much on that shoot package that when I see footage, afterwards, when I would like be on a range and shoot, if someone was shooting footage of it, the way all of us moved was a lot different, just like much more fluid. And there's a lot of really subtle muscle memory that only develops if you're on a range for hundreds and hundreds of hours. And like we were on a range every day for 10 hours a day for 6 months. So that was interesting. The whole workup cycle was good. There's a lot of again, I wasn't in combat, but there's a lot of training patrols we did, both on Camp Lejeune, where I was stationed at 2nd Recon, and some of the ones more so on Camp Lejeune. But we did some training patrols that would last about a week that were interesting, just in terms of we'd come in over the horizon from the ocean on Zodiacs, and then fin in, and then ruck into different, just to do surveillance training on Camp Lejeune. And that was really interesting. I think just to have some vivid memories of just like walking through the swamp at night, like in moonlight, or just, different experiences like that are kind of like vivid memories of the space and the environment and the weight of the ruck.
You trained with the Jordanian military.
Mm-hmm.
What's that like, training with a foreign service like that? Are
It
they
was
as well prepared as we are? And
not at all.
Like that?
It was challenging.
Yeah.
Even basic things like basic range safety that's like drilled into U.S. service members, that was non-existent, at least for that unit that we were working with. So it was pretty dangerous, actually. Like, people were flagging each other with rifles, and just lots of things that were very chaotic, and like, but it was good working with, we helped them the best we could, and they're nice. They were generous to us. They hosted us in their country, on one of their bases, and so it was good working with them. But yeah, the level of training there's definitely a big differential there.
Yeah. How about their level of professionalism? I mean, the Marines do it a certain way. It's a pretty high standard, but that's not the case everywhere. Were those guys as dedicated to fighting for their country as you guys were, or is it just a job to them because they needed money? I mean,
it's hard to say. You know what I mean? I don't speak Arabic, and it's hard to. I mean, I would say on the whole, no, but that's just my impression of interacting with them. It seemed more, but again, like, we weren't training with Jordanian special forces like that. Might, if it were like a special forces unit, or like a special operations unit that we were training with, I think that would have been very different. Just in terms of the like caliber of like soldier that we were training with, because Recon is not. I'd say it's like special operations adjacent. It's not special operations, but it's not like a standard line company infantry platoon. So there's a difference there as well.
Yeah. What year did you get out?
I got out in 2013.
2013.
Mm-hmm.
You currently work with the VA?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So I work for a VA PTSD and MST counseling program called the Vet Center program, which is a national counseling program. There's 300 vet centers in the U.S.
Right.
It's not just PTSD and MST, it's really counseling for any type of service-connected trauma. So their eligibility is there's kind of a lot of categories within that, but essentially any trauma associated with service. And they do individual, couples, family, and group therapy. So it's a little unique in terms of VA therapy programs, in that they address, they do family therapy, couples therapy. They kind of address the entire family unit in terms of addressing trauma, which can definitely impacts marriages and families. I mean, the divorce rate in the military is huge, and they also work with active service members. So when it was, I think it's the only VA program that can enroll active service members in addition to veterans. And part of that is just when it was set up, they wanted it to be an outlet for service members that may not want to talk to their chain of command about mental health issues due to the stigma associated with mental health.
Yeah.
Because if a soldier or Marine were to talk to a counselor at a vet center, not only does DoD not know, but big VA, like the larger VA medical ecosystem, doesn't track that interaction. Their clinical system is self-contained and it's not visible to anyone else.
Right.
So it's a robust clinical program. It's very community oriented. So the facilities themselves are usually in the community and they're not adjacent to a VA hospital. They're kind of embedded in the community, to be as accessible as possible for people.
Yeah. The DoD and the military has been they've been criticized in the past for not doing a very good job of supporting veterans, especially veterans with PTSD. Is that changed over the last decade or so? Are they getting better at it? I think some of the criticism has been that they've denied it's even happening.
I think it's definitely changing. I was talking to my dad's a pharmacist, and I was talking to him a few months ago, and he read a book. I forget the author of the book. Maybe the author's name is like Peter Levine, something like that. But the book is called "The Body Keeps a Score," and it's about trauma and PTSD. And so, I think the doctor's name was Peter Levine. But my dad was saying the first chapter is about how he started out his career as a physician at a VA hospital, maybe the Boston VA. I forget which VA, but maybe let's say the Boston VA.
Right.
And he had all these Vietnam vets that were drinking heavily, they were suicidal, they were, their marriages and relationships were just disintegrating. They were engaging in reckless behavior, getting in fights like classic symptoms of PTSD.
Yeah.
And I think I'm paraphrasing the quote, so it's like, I wish I had the book in front of me, but I think this physician saw all this stuff and he's like, okay, these guys are obviously having emotional distress from their war experiences.
Right.
And he told his leadership he wanted to conduct a clinical study on these veterans, on this population of veterans. And they said the response, like the formal response from whoever someone in a managerial position at VA was like, well, I wish I had the exact quote, but it's like, PTSD is not recognized by the DSM, whichever DSM version they were using, so they cannot be suffering from that. Or like, I wish I had the exact quote, but it's like, we do not recognize the existence of emotional trauma from combat. This is not recognized by VA, so you can't do the study.
Right.
So that physician turned in his resignation letter the next day, and he went into academia and did, his career, his whole subsequent career was around PTSD and trauma. But it's come a long way since then. I think that was the 70s when they were like, we're not going to acknowledge the existence of this because it's not categorized in whatever
Right.
DSM version they're using, so it doesn't exist.
It must not be.
Yeah, these guys are just malinger. Whatever the rationale or justification for not treating them holistically as people that went through really intense, like horrific things and are, struggling to process that. But it's a lot better now. It's not like that. Now there's tons of PTSD research, and VA's even doing a lot of, I think they call it the Integrative Health and Wellness Program. So VAMCs offer things like yoga and Tai Chi and meditation and acupuncture, and they're kind of incorporating more holistic approaches to wellness than just pharmaceutical interventions, and I think that's great. I think it's moving in the right direction, and it's trying. Like, there's even a big grant. I think it's called Mission Daybreak, but there's a big. So VA is offering something like a $20 million grant to organizations or nonprofits or people that can propose good solutions to veteran suicide. So it can be anything really. It's kind of like a Shark Tank, but with $20 million. They're going to allocate $20 million so that whoever wins it can implement their idea. But they're trying to get new ideas and new approaches that work that can help people better, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, good. Like progress is being made.
Yeah. And a lot of the dialogue within VA is around innovating and finding solutions and making systems that really support vets, instead of systems that just support themselves. They're trying to make systems that support vets, and they're doing research to try to find better ways to help people, which is good.
Yeah.
It's much better than like whichever VA hospital that was in the 1970s saying, these people don't have trauma for more. Like that's not a thing. Like essentially the response was like, it's not in the book, so it's not a thing. Right. And meanwhile, it was the 70s, so like these guys had just come back from Vietnam and were not being, they're the PTSD was not being addressed whatsoever. They were getting health care, which is good, right. But they're really having a hard time. And actually, vet centers themselves were founded for Vietnam vets in '79, and I think a lot of the origin of the program was to try to create a peer support program for Vietnam vets, so they could at least have some access to services and a counseling resource that's accessible. And a lot of the staff in the early days were Vietnam vets, and many of them still are. More than 50% of the staff in the program are veterans, and they try to keep that kind of peer support focus.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to throw in there?
I hope more vets are able to tell their stories and get connected to the resources they need. And I hope if people are isolated, they're able to find connection to communities. I know I had a hard time after I got out for many years, and I think a lot of it is that when you're in the military, you have a very strong community, of people that are around you all the time. And I think people are meant to live in community with each other. Military structure kind of replicates kinship structure in terms of having a very close-knit community that you're connected with continuously. And so I think when people are in and they have that, even though there can be a lot of dysfunction in the military, and often is, particularly for people with any kind of experience of sexual assault, trauma, that type of thing, that's extremely horrific because the systems that are meant to care for them are hurting them.
Yeah.
But I think when people get out, they often really struggle because they're no longer have that support network, and it can be challenging to reconnect and reestablish those things. So for example, I appreciate what Jordan Heavenstreet is doing with his. So Jordan, we're at an event that's a fundraiser for a small nonprofit called Salvage USA, founded by Jordan Heavenstreet, who was a team leader in my platoon on that first deployment. And I think he's really trying to bring veterans and their families together so that people don't feel isolated. So I like that he's doing that work. I think that kind of community-centered work is needed. I don't know how to scale it. Like I haven't really seen an organization that can scale that. And I don't know that it's a role of VA to do that kind of community engagement. I mean, I think it tries to, like my program tries to do community engagement, but it's hard to do that. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It requires resources. It's hard to scale it. It's very, I don't know that you can scale kind of building support structures and kinship structures.
Right.
So it may not be scalable. It may just be something that is local. But I like what Jordan's doing, with his work. So I hope people that are out there that are suffering get connected to resources and don't suffer alone.
Because there are resources out there.
There are, yeah. Yeah.
Well, on behalf of the Americans Wartime Experience, I thank you for your service, and I thank you for sitting down and talking to us. I do appreciate it.
Thanks, Dennis.